How's it going, everyone? This is Tom of RedmanPie.com. I have in front of me the iPad Air, literally just released yesterday, along with the Nexus 7 second generation. This is on the left and the iPad mini, or kind of in the back, and then the iPad Air in the front, as you can see. I thought it's only fit to put them through a speed test comparison, see how well they perform on their respective operating systems. We did a full hardware comparison yesterday between the iPad Air, the iPad mini, and the Nexus 7 second generation, so if you would like to check that out, the link will be in the description and in the post over on RedmanPie.com. In a short summary though, the iPad Air is a lot larger with a 9.7 inch screen, whereas the Nexus 7 has a 7 inch screen. The iPad Air also has an aluminium construction versus the Nexus 7's plastic construction. So the first test we're going to be looking at is called Geekbench 3. This is pretty much a system-wide assessor. It kind of gives you a benchmark score on how fast your system that you're running the benchmark on is. I've actually included an iPad mini in this test as well to give you a reference point to see just how fast the iPad Air and the Nexus 7 are. So as you can see, the iPad Air scores a single core performance of 1478 and a multi-core performance of 2684. Whereas as you can see, the Nexus 7 second generation here clocks in with a single core performance score of 579 and a multi-core performance of 1815. So still relatively high, very quick, and as a benchmark here, I'm going to show you the iPad mini, and as you can see, this one clocks in and not even half the score of the Nexus 7 II. As you can see here, once the benchmark finishes, it's a single score performance of 263 and a multi-core performance of 498, so not that good, and it really does show off the power of the iPad Air. Next up, I did a boot test between the two, and I'm actually doing this a little bit differently. I'm doing it from when I touched the buttons, so as soon as my fingers went on each button, I started the timer, because, to be honest, that's part of the boot test, and both of them, I pressed them at both at the same time and held them down until I saw the lights, or the screens, start up on both screens. As you can see, the iPad Air will be first at just 22 seconds, and then the Nexus 7 II comes on at 29 seconds, and interestingly, the iPad Air actually turns itself off, it locks itself after starting up, so take that for what it's worth. Next up, we have some gaming performance. Here's the Nexus 7 II running Riptide GP, and let's talk a little bit about the displays, because the performance on both of these devices is just fantastic. You're not going to find almost any stuttering on even the most intensive cross-platform games, but the display on the Nexus 7 is actually a full 1080p display at a pixel density of 323, so a very, very high-res display, and even though the display on the iPad Air is fantastic, it's absolutely flawless, the Nexus 7 II really does trump it, I would have to say. But that being said, it is nitpicking between the two, because you're definitely going to be happy with the display of the iPad Air. And here the Air is running Riptide GP2 as well, so it's the same game running on the different tablets. Obviously, the main difference here being the screen size. Obviously, you get a slightly lower resolution, a slightly lower pixel density on the iPad Air, but it does translate into a very good screen anyway. But you do have that extra few inches on the screen size, so if you're looking for a very rich media experience, the iPad Air is probably the option you want to go for. Moving on to some browser tests now, we're going to be starting off with a JavaScript performance benchmark. This is called SunSpider. It's just quite a good representation of how your tablet, or device actually, will just perform on the web. And as you can see, the iPad Air is off to a raring start, absolutely tears through this benchmark using Safari. Both are on incognito mode, or private mode on Safari, so caches and things like that aren't going to be interfering with this test. But as you can see, the test is nearing the end now. I've just skipped forward a little bit. The iPad Air just tore through it with a score of just 392 milliseconds to complete the entire benchmark. The lowest score here is better. And then on the Nexus 7 II, 1088 milliseconds to complete this benchmark. So about 2.5 times the performance on the iPad Air. Next up, we're using the HTML5 Impact Benchmark. This one measures the HTML5 performance of your browser and device. Interestingly, a kind of different size, different resolution actually loaded, but of course it is the same content, entirely the same content loading on both devices. It's just displayed slightly differently on the Nexus 7 II. It doesn't zoom in as much, which is interesting here. But the iPad is pretty much just tearing through this process, very, very quick. whereas the Nexus 7 II is slightly laggy, and as you can see that's displayed in the score. The iPad Air comes in at 3,608 and the Nexus 7 II at 2,339, so again quite a substantial win by the iPad Air. Of course, this is a browser test, so it wouldn't be very complete without actually loading some websites itself. We'll start off with redmondpie.com. And the main body of the page actually loaded quicker on the Nexus, but the entire page loaded quicker on the iPad, but very similar in speeds overall. Next up we have my own website, and we'll just load that here right now. And the iPad is actually quicker, but again, it's very, very marginal. You might get certain elements which load quicker on certain pages, but it's very, very close. I'm not going to even mention a winner here just because they're so close in speeds and web performance in general. And then we'll finish up with a very content-heavy website like the NewYorkTimes.com. And just open that up, and this one's a little bit more pronounced. The iPad Air actually loads the page quite a lot quicker than the Nexus 7, but again, it just varies from page to page. You're gonna, even if you did this test yourself, you'd see different results, just depending on things like your internet connection and other such things which influence browser speeds. There we have it, guys. This pretty much wraps up our comparison here. Am I going to declare a winner? I don't think so, purely because the speeds are so similar on these devices now. They're so quick that the main choice you're going to have to make is, do you prefer iOS or Android? That is the choice which is going to dictate what tablet you're going to want to get. Just know that both tablets are very, very quick, and you won't be disappointed with the performance at all. Hopefully you have enjoyed this comparison. If you have, drop it a like, subscribe to the Redmond Pie TV YouTube channel if you haven't done already. I'll be pumping out lots more content just like this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.